Magic is what happens when peace is near.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Season 8 of Enlightened Conversations. This season we're diving into all things 7D consciousness, what it is, what it isn't, and how it shows up in our everyday life. I'll also be sharing concepts from my new book, Pieces of Science, towards a unified peace theory, as we explore the fascinating overlaps between spirituality, human behaviour, consciousness, and how we can integrate more peace into our lives. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
Together we are clear.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Lightworker and welcome back to another episode of Enlightened Conversations. We are up to part 2 of episode 12. And we are covering money and 7D consciousness more from the viewpoint of collective and societal impacts and practical practices that we can introduce into our lives so we can align with conscious abundance and also for conscious creation and positive impact, using our money in positive ways. So I'm joined by my regular panel, Willow Roberts, Leanne Barefoot Medium, Chris Childs, Sathiavanni, and Karen Andrews Roberts. And our first question that we have today is, how do societal systems and collective beliefs about money affect individual abundance? First up, we've got Linda.
Well, media, the mass media, for starters. You know, people see things on online and think, I've got to have that. I've got to look like that. I've got to do that. And like, that's what they've got to do. Even with the AI side of things now, they're trying to change the way that they look so that, I mean, I turned 60 last year and I've got a few wrinkles and I've got a sweat up because I'm hot, but there's no want. I am who I am, you know, and I'm loved for who I am. And so once you are in that spot and you're not wanting to keep up with the Joneses and not have everything, I think once you haven't had anything, you appreciate when you do have, you know, and it's like the saying, when I know better, I do better. So when you know better, you do better. And you realise that you don't have to have everything.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. I think the gift of not having enough or not having as much as we'd like to have is that you realise you have enough when you're in that spiritual place. And that leads to always feeling you have enough, which leads to more abundance. It's quite ironic, really, but it's awesome. So, yeah, let's hear from Leanne.
Oh, goodness. So if we're not conscious and we're not present to the stories that others can put into our awareness, we can take them on and make them true for ourselves. And particularly when it comes to money, they can be really small or they can be really large ones that create some pretty big ripples in our life. And so be really conscious and present to what stories other people are telling you about money or abundance, and how that feels in your body, whether it feels true for you or whether you kind of go, oh, not really sure. If you're going, I'm not really sure, it's not aligned for you, and that's okay. Let the other person believe that and move forward with your own story.
Yeah, I think if you're not really sure, that's a sign that you're not really sure and you don't really know, and there's a part of you that needs to explore some more about something. And it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater or anything like that. It's just about becoming a bit more clear with yourself. So I think, yeah, that signal of unclarity is a signal that more needs to be explored about that belief. All right, let's hear from Chris.
Well, we all operate inside larger systems, so economies, education systems, and those things, you know, definitely influence opportunities. And at the same time, individual mindset and behavior still matter enormously, because a balanced viewpoint really recognizes both. Systems matter, but so do personal beliefs and decisions and actions. So when people understand how these two react and interact, they really can navigate the financial world far more intelligently.
And from a field perspective, our sovereignty and owning our reality and our thoughts, feelings, behaviors helps us to identify if something's coming in to our energy field or our mind or our feelings. So we can actually discern, is that my belief or is it someone else's? And I'm just kind of taking it on. I'm just carrying it. And so it helps us to be able to create clearer boundaries around our frequency and our beliefs. Okay, let's hear from Sathiavanni.
Again, it comes down to hierarchy. It comes down to segregation. It comes down to separation. So with the growth of the higher frequency growth, and what it facilitates helps break down that segregation, helps break down that separation, because ultimately money does not discriminate. It is the human programming that sees the difference, So what happens is, with the breakdown, it is the old programming that becomes obsolete. Money doesn't see the difference.
That's right. We're not victims to money. Money is not judging us. It's just a frequency that either we're attracting it or we're not, because of our belief system in our relationship to it. Let's hear from Karen.
It can affect individual abundance enormously, depending on what we choose to believe and anchor into. I think that we can get very stuck in systems that are very limiting and not believe that there is another way to exist in this world. So that can be very stressful. I think it can feel as though we're very trapped in a system that doesn't allow us to expand beyond it. This is where our own individual connection to self, to heart, to the wisest parts of ourselves, to being more open and expansive in the flow, allow us to move outside of those closed, limiting systems and create something very different, more expansive, more abundant.
Yeah, and that just reiterated my last point, that we are, connected to this greater field, but we also have this sovereignty, and we do need to make those decisions for ourselves as to what reality we want to live in. And we can live in more of an expansive reality. No problemo. It's easy. We just need to make the decision and turn up and commit to that decision for ourselves and what that looks like. All right, let's move on to our next question, which is, how can 7D awareness influence economic systems for collective good? First up, we've got Linda.
It comes back to people. You've still got the top 5 people running the media and the politics in the world. You've only got to look at how Trump's stopping things and starting things, like how money, he wants to buy bloody Greenland. When I was in Iceland years ago, there was a thing that Russia wanted to buy Greenland, and they're going, Greenland's not up for sale. Denmark looks after us. But it's all to do with money, shipping, trades, the same as the canal that they want to build a new one. It's all to do with money. So it's power. People look at it as power, where when I'm tapping into that power spot of confident and happy and things like that, I step into that, but there's a humbleness, there's a humanness there. And sometimes I stop myself. So there's a little bit of a block for me with my power, because I've seen what power does, what power and money does. So we'll work on that later. So it depends on your thought processes and how you look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we align our power with money, our power is misplaced. It's actually, we're handing our power over to money. So we're disempowered. And I'm not sure how you worked on that, Linda, but I hope that you came to that place of realizing money isn't power. And I see that in society. I see that with world leaders, that they actually think that, more money means more power. And to a point in the short term, maybe it does. But in the long term, and in terms of their own soul and their own development, maybe not so much. All right, let's hear from Leanne.
I believe that it is those who are more conscious and more present and more able to bring that knowledge and insight and wisdom through that can have a bigger impact collectively for those who may not be. It might just be a tiny little thing that's said that can have a massive impact on someone that creates a huge shift in their world. So don't discount sharing your lived experiences or your story with someone. Whether it's not having any money and no food in your fridge and no petrol to put in the car and no job or whatever it might be, and then what you did to take steps to transform and change that, share that story. It might impact one human. How amazing is that?
Yeah, and one of the biggest discoveries that we made with peace as a science was that peace is inevitable. So when we understand that and we explore that through unified peace theory, what we understand is when that filters upwards and we have more conscious people in leadership running the country, then of course we're going to see more of that in action. And through the unified peace theory lens, we're going to be able to forensically disseminate where the peace is falling down so that the world leaders and the power and the distribution of money and all those things are impacted, and the influence is there from a consciousness level, not just a power, people in the positions of power level. All right, let's hear from Chris.
Well, higher awareness usually brings long-term thinking. And we all know long-term thinking creates wealth. So if we're not after that automatic immediate result all of the time, if we know that if we slowly build and grow and allow time, long-term thinking works. So leaders who think more consciously tend to consider the wider impact of financial decisions, not just the short-term profits. So they can lead into ethical investing and sustainable business practices and more responsible economic policies. So economic systems evolve as people within them evolve. And I remember hearing years ago about some businesses in Japan, and they had, we set 1, 3, and 5 year goals, and we think 5 years is a long way away. They were setting 200-year goals, financial goals for their companies. They were very big picture, long picture. And, they weren't going to be around to reap the rewards of all of this. So that's when you're starting to really see that level, 7 thinking coming in, where it's really for the better, the good of all, and the long-term good of the people, the nation, and the planet. That sort of thinking.
Yeah, Chris, that reactive short-term knee-jerk reaction is very short-term, and it's very often aligned with a very narcissistic approach to leadership and a dominant leadership, a real force-based leadership, whereas conscious leadership is all about the longer term and the collective good, and it's also flexible as well. It doesn't mean it's not flexible and it can't adjust, and even if you have a 200-year plan, you still have a flexibility somewhere built in. So it's about collective field-based consciousness evolving. I actually feel that economic systems will evolve as our consciousness evolves, and we might not have capitalism till the day dot. All right, let's hear from Sathiavanni.
It'll come down to equal balance, equal pay, equal everything, so that there is no injustices, there is no war, there is no... Bear with me, I'm just been given a lot of images here and I have to try and just articulate it the best I can. It is going to bring about a lot of balance, and that comes down to what do we as a humanity require? What is the utmost importance that we all require and we all need in order to survive? And again, what is the fundamentals here is love. Okay? Do unto others how you wish to be done to you. So it is very much, the universe, the divine universe is going back, is teaching, as a collective, what is important here, what matters here. Okay? So that's where there's going to be a lot of shifts collectively in class status, how we view someone, and how, labels going out the window. So there's a lot of changes coming up.
Yes, Sathiavanni, and I do believe consciousness is evolving at the collective level. And a lot of our frustration, and we talk about this in Peace as a Science, is it feels like we're going to combust. We call this threshold emergence, which is like this capacity to hold until we can't anymore and something has to give. But that's the threshold, and that's where we change, at the threshold. And I think that is emerging with some of the more radical groups that have emerged over the period of the last few years and become a little bit more in our face. And I think it's all a bit of a stirring pot for a bit of a threshold emergence change. Okay, let's hear from Karen.
Well, if we have more individuals connected into 7D consciousness that we know is flow, expansion, sharing, helping others, the more people that live in that way with those beliefs, they allow that to flow on, to flow out into society, to flow into economic systems in new ways and bring change, bring growth, and bring more of an abundant flow, so that moving forward we can live in different systems that allow for expansion and abundance.
And I think in that respect, I think it's really good to own that we're at the precipice, and how exciting that is. To be excited about it is really owning that we realize what's true and what's real and what's changing. And that's an exciting thing to be part of. Yeehaw. All right, so now we're going to move on to practical practices. So the first question we're asking is, what daily practices or rituals help listeners align with conscious abundance? And first up, we have Linda.
Seeing the magic in the ordinary, being aware, omnipresent. I go out there. Look, I could be laying on a couch. It's got to the point now I could be laying on a couch and I'll go, what? Okay, and I'll go out there and it'll be a rainbow. It's like feeling the butterfly before you see it. It's like seeing something in the cloud. It's being so aware of the subtle differences in energy changes and what it makes your body feel like. And so when you start, abundance to people means all sorts of things. What abundance means to me means different, like sunset, sunrise, whatever, kid laughing, whatever. And money's included in that as well. And when you are in that space of being present and seeing the magic in the ordinary, then it starts to just flow because you're aware that the abundance is around you.
Yes, Linda. I experienced that at the end of writing my book, Peace as a Science. I'd gone through all the facts and the figures, and I realized how it was the elephant hiding in plain sight, with all the sciences bridged together, agreeing that peace is measurable, peace is achievable, peace builds on peace. And also in that moment, I realized peace was magic. It felt like magic. And that's why I wrote the song Magic is What Happens, that we play at the beginning of Enlightened Conversations, because it feels like magic when peace is here. And that's the only way I could describe it. It was a phenomena, and it just felt like magic. So 100 million% agree with you there. All right, let's hear from Leanne.
Communicate with communicate with abundance or money or whatever that is for you. And sometimes people use, and I kind of want to quash this a bit in some ways. People say, I want to call in abundance. Is it abundance you're calling in, or is it money? Right? Because there's often this fear of actually asking for it. It's just an energy. So we have abundance. We have abundance of knowledge, of wisdom, of skills, of air, of whatever, of sunshine, of rain, or whatever. Abundance is there. What are you actually asking for? So call it in, ask for money. Money is the easiest thing to call in and manifest if you ask for it. So I would start there with looking at what your belief about abundance is and align with actually asking for what is it that you want an abundance of.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in be careful what you ask for, because if you're not specific enough, you could get an abundance of trauma. You could get an abundance of mental health issue. You could get an abundance of debt. Like, yeah. But I'm also a believer in feeling as if you have what you really want. It's here now, and you always have enough. I always have more than enough is one of my favorite things to say. And I always do have more than enough. And that's the reality of my life. And it's never just been like that, like magically just been like that. Like, I've done the work, but gotten to a point where I actually believe that and believe that I'm worthy in that flow. Everybody's worthy to have more than enough. And you know what? We all have more than enough because we're connected to this amazing field. And we are not separate. So our cup is always full. Our cup always runneth over. All right. Better than our cup runneth us over. All right. Let's hear from Chris.
Well, you know me, I always believe it's a simple habit of paying attention to where your money actually goes. Most people are surprised once they start tracking it. And that's always been a big part of what I've taught. So once you know where your money goes, there's no judgment. But if you have no clue, a lot of people go, they've run out of money before they've run out of time before the next payday, and they haven't a clue where their money goes. So once you've got control over what your money's actually doing, and again, no judgment, it's not going to affect anyone but yourself as to what you spend it on. However, if it's a choice of you spending it on those things, that's great. It's when you have no clue that you can't, you will never get ahead. And then there's just sheer waste. That's the biggest thing that will make the biggest difference. So I always teach, I would rather you spend money on stuff that you get pleasure from than stuff that is just sheer waste. And what do I mean by waste is, if you get really organized in your kitchen, you can save a fortune. So if you look in your fridge, your freezer, and your cupboard, and make your food from that, and only replace what you need, and plan your meals, and chuck less out. If you eat rather than throw out. Now, a lot of people just take their trolleys, and they have no clue what's in the cupboard, the freezer, and the fridge, and they go, oh, I better do this, and I'm thinking of making that and whatever. And they come home, open the fridge, and they go, oh, fridge is full. And then they start throwing out the rotten vegetables they didn't eat. So storing your veggies properly, reducing waste, using what's there first before you buy more. Think about if your wheelie bin is heavy when you're pushing it down the driveway. If you've got a heavy wheelie bin, I reckon you can reduce your grocery spend by somewhere between $20,000 and in some cases $50,000 a year just from not throwing stuff out. So there you go. That's my passion.
I love that that's your passion, Chris. No, who wants to waste stuff? What a waste, right? I must admit, getting honest with where you're spending your money is really super important. It's about that stabilizer of peace again. Honesty, it gets us to a place that is not only able to support change, but we can do it in peaceful ways. I love doing a big shop, like a couple weeks, and then that second or third week, like where you're running low on bits, you just go, oh, what have we got left over? Or what didn't we eat? We might have eaten out, or we might have created 2 meals out of one thing that we thought we wouldn't. And then, yeah, I love that. Like, let's do some bubble and squeak, or we had a meal like that last night, actually. We just added what we had in the fridge to some gnocchi, and it was amazing. We hadn't done that before. And yeah, just you become little inventors too. It's actually quite fun. I love it. All right, let's hear from Sathiavanni.
I suppose from in a societal part in how you can contribute is very much in the work that you do in your vocation that you've chosen, how effectively and how positively are you affecting humanity? Okay. For example, I don't know why I've been given this. For example, if you studied to get a degree to become a lawyer, what is the sole purpose? Was it to be able to get that six-figure, money as this high-flying lawyer, or is it to fight for truth and justice? Okay, so there's going to be a bit of a shake-up energetically, where as humanity collectively in one shape, form, or another, and the divine will know how to facilitate this, is fully question why they are doing what they are doing. Why are they in this role? What is the purpose? So there's going to be a lot of self-reflection. There's going to be a lot of situation and scenarios that's going to be orchestrated for individuals to finally be operating as their truth to create the society that we all deserve to live in. Okay, so there's always going to be the right and the wrong and all that sort of stuff taking place, but that's also still part of the evolution, the growth, the changes that is being affected or being facilitated universally, okay, as we're growing.
Yeah, I think our relationship with ourselves, our why we're doing what we're doing, is really consciously feeding the grid, feeding the field, feeding in the good juju, feeding in the joy, in the peace, in the presence, in the belief in the faith, in the abundance of goodness and higher energy and higher frequency. So yeah, of course, as we all amplify that, the grid itself, the collective consciousness, creates more conscious abundance for everyone. Everybody starts becoming much more conscious of how much we actually have, because we become more conscious of how connected we actually are to one another and to the field. So it's a big one. And I do see those changes as well, Sathiavanni. There's a lot of changes coming, and I appreciate that you've been given a lot of information while we were doing our recording, and I really honor that, and I appreciate that so much for my heart space to yours. Thank you so much. All right, and now we have Karen.
Anything that moves us from a state of stress to a state of peace, of calm. So anything at all, whatever people choose to do that helps them to move from a state of stress. For me, it's breathing, meditation, EFT tapping, yoga, moving my body, listening to birds in my garden, looking at water, any practices that help me, and I feel it in my body, feel it in my being. Somatically, I feel the softening in my body. I know then that those practices for me are opening me to more abundance.
Yeah, that softening is so important, and we can't soften our guards if we don't feel supported on some level. And so if you don't feel like you can drop your guard, you might need some support with that from a counselor or a psychotherapist or a healer or a community or a friend. And that's okay. We need to start somewhere, and calling in higher resources before we do any kind of deep inner work is really super important in my book. And we need to call on that kind of abundance initially so that we can do work that we might feel might bring up a little bit of painful stuff for us, and that's okay. We all start somewhere, and that's often the place that we start. We need that balm around us, that healing balm, and those frequencies to hold us while we go through that healing. So now we're up to our last question. How can money be used as a tool for conscious creation and positive impact? Bring it on home, Linda.
Well, when you get the money, you actually can spend like 10% of it. You can do some paid ads with it, technology, be more accessible, get out there to help more people. So it doesn't just mean that you get it and you don't do anything with it. If you're in service and you're helping people, then you're going to use a portion of that to help more people find you. So it's sort of like you getting out there and being seen, sharing your story. Whether you're doing a course and you're working on yourself, then when you're paying that person that created that course, and then you'll fix yourself, and then you'll tell somebody else about that course, and they'll go, oh my God, I need to do that. So it's just a flow-on effect.
Yeah, and I think that's where advertising can be used for our highest good as well. We see more and more conscious creation tools and resources available out there, things to help us connect to our higher self, things to help us make sense of the world, things to help us heal, things to bring more joy and peace in. And we use our money to create a more informative world. All right, let's hear from Leanne.
Well, we exchange energy with everyone and everything that we come across in our world, whether that's through our thoughts and our words, through our emotions, love, compassion, kindness, all of those things, anger, whatever. I just had the word hate come in, but anyway, probably what's going on globally. But it's also about looking at, and I've lost my train of thought, which is interesting, right? So it's also about connecting in with how that money can help us really move things in our world. So if I pay someone $20, that might put dinner on their table. If I pay someone, the electricity bill, thank you. It gives me light and internet access so I can support other people. It's like, it's everything. It's how our world operates. Whether we like it or agree with it or not, we exchange money for services and products so that we can do the things that we're here to do and be on purpose and on path and help the collective to learn and grow and expand consciousness in amongst it.
Yeah, that's what I believe we all kind of get to when we have money too. I've heard of a lot of people who have a lot of money that they have the realization, well, I've got all this money, now what? And wow, I've made it. I've got money, and now what I'm going to do with it. And they have like an existential crisis because they don't know who they are, and they don't know. They start to feel maybe there's an emptiness around all that. So yeah, it's an interesting phenomena. Having money doesn't give you a sense of your higher self. That can't be bought. All right, let's hear from Chris.
Money is really just stored potential when you think about it. When directed well, it can build businesses, it can fund innovation, it can support education, improve communities. So instead of asking how much can I accumulate, a more interesting question becomes, what can this resource actually help create? So when money is used with intention, it becomes far more than wealth. It becomes a tool for contribution and change.
I love the thought of thinking about what you want to spend your money on to make a difference before you even receive it. I absolutely love that thought, because often we're so caught up in what don't I have, what can I spend it on, what can I, like, even big purchases, and I want this if I win the lotto, but the reality is we're coming from a place of lack. Whereas if we're looking at how can I generate more consciousness into the world with money, then I'm actually coming from a place of richness, because I'm already thinking that that's a possibility and that's an intention. So it's actually very powerful. I love that, Chris. Thank you. All right, let's hear from Sathiavanni.
How money can be used is there's going to also be when you're making donations to charity and so forth, is very much, well, where is that money going? Okay, you're doing charity, but where is the money going? So there's going to be a lot more transparency in how money will be utilized for multiple purposes and reasons behind. So there is transparency. Okay, yes, there is still be, in terms of your personal life and so forth, there is that privacy, but there is going to be a fair bit of transparency how the funds are being utilized to ensure that that X amount of money is going to buy that formula for the babies. And yes, we can see the babies are being fed so that it is having the right effect, so forth.
I do believe that, Sathiavanni, that 7D consciousness brings with it a certain amount of integrity, honesty, transparency as to how we're utilizing that money, because we want people to know that. We actually want people to see the transparency. We're not seeking to hide anything because there's nothing to hide. So therefore it is more visual, it is more open for people to see what's actually happening. It's really not rocket science, is it? It is what it is. I know, it's funny. Anyway, all right, let's lastly hear from Karen.
When money is used in generous, expansive ways, it's going to have a beautiful impact. We're going to use it consciously if we have that generous openness around our relationship with money. So for me, I have a belief that there's plenty to use, to spare, and to share. How can I use what I have? How can I share it with others? How can I help to uplift others? And so for me, I'm doing that very consciously. And if we have more people that have these more expansive, open beliefs around money, we will use it. We will not hold on to it. We will use it in conscious ways to help others.
I love that. To use, to spare, and to share. There's always enough because there's spare. Use it wisely and for my highest good, and share it because there's enough to go around, and do it in positive ways that impact the planet. What a beautiful way to end our episode on money and 7D consciousness. Thank you so much to all my guests: Willow Roberts, Leanne Barefoot Medium, Chris Childs, Sathiavanni, Karen Andrews Roberts, Sarah Jade. Thank you for being part of this series, this 12-part series that turned into 12 and a half parts. Keeping an open mind. Sometimes things happen like that. I feel like we've covered so much in such a richness, and it's brought so much joy to me. And it's filled my heart with hope and love for humanity. And I'm just so blessed to have had the privilege to have been the host of this information, and happy to be the container, the holder, and the distributor for this wonderful good news. All right, everybody, until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves, big love to you all, and may you feel peace in and peace out all the time. Blessings.
When peace is true. Magic is what happens between